That evening was meant to be a celebration. After 35 years in the firm, my husband was finally retiring. Friends flew in from out of state. The banquet hall was filled with old colleagues, neighbors, our grown children, and a slideshow that played memories from a life we had spent building together. He stood in a dark blue suit, smiling, surrounded by applause. I watched as people toasted to his character, his loyalty, his integrity, and all I could do was hold my champagne glass steady, smile on cue, and count the minutes. You see, I already knew. I knew that this party wasn't just marking the end of his career. It was also the last night he'd get to control the narrative. I had spent months planning this event. The seating chart, the speeches, the guest list, every detail, had a reason. And so, when the time came for me to give my toast, I stepped up to the microphone like any proud wife would. I looked at our guests, then at him, and I said, "Before we end the night, I'd like you all to meet the rest of his family, the one he's kept hidden for over 12 years. The air collapsed. Laughter faded. Chairs shifted. Glasses paused midair. I could hear my own heartbeat in the silence that followed. His face, white. His hand, frozen halfway to his tie. No one moved. No one spoke. Until they walked in. A woman. 2 children. And the truth. For some people justice is loud. But for women like me it comes dressed in patience, served cold in front of cake and candles. This is what really happened. Long before the toast, before the silence and the stares, I was just a girl who believed in building something that would last. We met in college. He was tall, confident, and ambitious. The kind of man who had a plan for everything, including us. I was studying literature. He was in business school. He said we'd be a power couple, him closing deals, me raising our future leaders. It sounded romantic. It sounded fair. And so I chose him. I chose him when I turned down the editorial job in New York. I chose him when I followed him across the country for his promotions. I chose him when I tucked my degree into a drawer and poured everything I had into making a home worth coming back to. 27 years. That's how long I stood beside him. I packed school lunches. I kissed scraped knees. I taught both our children how to tie their shoes, how to apologize, how to never lie. I planned Christmas mornings, sat through high school plays, showed up to football games with homemade snacks. And every single time he came home from another late night at the office, I greeted him with warmth instead of questions. Because that's what I thought marriage meant, believing in the version of him he gave to me. We had a life people envied. Family portraits in color-coordinated outfits. Anniversary dinners at the same Italian place where we had our first date. Sunday nights watching old movies on the couch, the kids stretched across the floor. But over time, little pieces began to shift. He started leaving earlier, coming back later. Trips that were supposed to last 2 days stretched into 4. Business meetings turned into weekends away. He always had a reason. A client dinner. A delayed flight. An emergency board meeting. And I always believed him. 'Cause I wanted to. Because if I didn't believe him, then I'd have to ask the one question I wasn't sure I could survive the answer to. Was I still his only home? I ignored the shift in his voice when he said my name. I dismissed the way he flinched when I touched him in his sleep. I chalked up the missed birthdays to pressure, the empty eyes to exhaustion. I told myself this was just what happens after decades together, things settle. People get tired. I convinced myself that I had everything I needed. 2 children I loved with my whole being. A house I kept warm. A husband who still wore his wedding ring. I thought loyalty was love. I thought silence was strength. But what I didn't realize was that I wasn't just holding my marriage together. I was also holding on to a version of myself that no longer existed. The version who thought that if you gave everything, you'd never be left with nothing. It started with a receipt. Just a folded piece of paper at the bottom of the laundry basket. A high-end jewelry store. He hadn't given me anything in years. Not since our 20th anniversary, when he forgot the reservation and came home with supermarket flowers. But this receipt wasn't for me. It was dated 2 weeks before Christmas. I never saw a box. Never saw a card. Nothing. I held it for a long time before I tucked it into the back of my closet. A few days later, another clue. A charge for a hotel in a town I'd never heard of. Not far from ours, just far enough to be private. I asked him casually, pretending to forget what I'd seen. "Oh, I was just covering a client dinner," he said without blinking. I had to crash for the night. Too tired to drive back. That night he held me like everything was fine. But something had changed. And once you start questioning, you can't stop hearing what was always there. His phone was always on silent now. His texts were guarded. He changed his cologne. He lost weight, started jogging again, bought new shirts, smiled more, but not at home. Then, the moment that made everything snap into place. I was helping him pack for a short trip, just a quick overnight conference. That's when I opened the side compartment of his briefcase. There it was. A second phone. Black. Clean. Just silence. I stood in the bedroom holding it like it might explode. When he came in, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I asked. Calmly. "What is this?" He didn't miss a beat. That's just a backup. Work gave it to me in case the company line fails. I watched him lie to me with the ease of a seasoned actor. And then he flipped the script. "Why are you going through my things?" he asked. "Are you feeling okay lately? You've been acting off." Gaslight. Deflect. Control. I had seen the signs in movies. I had read them in articles. But I never imagined I'd live them in my own house. He made me feel like I was losing my grip. Like I was the one being unreasonable. Like I owed him an apology. But I didn't say sorry. Not this time. That night I called my best friend. Her name is Karen. We met when our boys were in preschool. She was the kind of woman who spoke truth even when it hurt. I told her everything. The receipts. The phone. The stories that didn't line up. She listened quietly, then said, "You're not crazy. And you're not alone. But if you want the truth, you have to stop trusting his version of it." That was the first time in a long time I felt like someone saw me. Like I wasn't disappearing inside my own marriage. 2 days later, I met with a private investigator. I handed him a photo. Gave him his schedule. Told him the places he said he'd be. "If there's nothing going on," I said, "I'll sleep better. But if there is," I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. Because I already knew. My gut wasn't whispering anymore. It was screaming. If this part broke your heart like it broke mine, hit that like button so I know I'm not alone. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Let's talk about it. The envelope was thick. Thicker than I expected. I met the private investigator at a diner just off Route 42. We sat in a booth near the window. He ordered black coffee. I ordered nothing. My stomach couldn't hold anything that morning. He slid the envelope across the table, like it was something fragile. Something that might break if I opened it too fast. "You sure you want to see this?" he asked. I nodded. I didn't speak. My hands were already shaking. I peeled back the seal slowly. The first photo nearly knocked the breath out of me. Him. Laughing. In jeans and a t-shirt I'd never seen. Standing outside a modest beige house with a perfectly trimmed lawn. A woman beside him. Her hand on his back like it belonged there. 2 kids playing on the driveway. A boy and a girl. 8. Maybe 12. I flipped through image after image. Him holding a bicycle seat steady while the boy pedaled. Him on a porch swing with the little girl curled beside him, her head on his chest. A birthday party. A picnic. A Christmas tree. The kind of moments I thought were ours. Moments I worked years to build. He hadn't just cheated. He had duplicated. Started over. Built a second life 3 counties away like it was nothing. My world collapsed inside that brown envelope. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember walking into the house. All I remember is sitting on the bathroom floor with the pictures spread around me, like puzzle pieces from a life I wasn't a part of. And I broke. Not a scream. Not a sob. A quiet, gutted unraveling. The kind of pain that doesn't make a sound but swallows you whole. For a moment I wanted to confront him. I wanted to scream at him the way I never had. I wanted to throw every plate, every memory, every promise at his feet and ask how he could lie for 12 years with a straight face. But I didn't. I didn't scream. I didn't shatter a single thing. Instead, I gathered every photo. I put them back in the envelope. I placed it in a locked drawer beside my wedding album. And I sat down at the kitchen table. I stared at the calendar. Circled the date of his retirement party. 6 weeks away. That's when it began. Not the pain. That had already started. What began was something else. Something colder, clearer. For 27 years, I had stood quietly in the shadows of a marriage I thought was sacred. But now I saw it all for what it really was. A carefully managed performance. He wasn't going to retire into the sunset with me. He was going to disappear. And begin again. No more. I wouldn't stop him. But I wouldn't let him leave untouched. He built this house of lies. And I was going to let him watch it collapse one truth at a time. Starting with the party. He had no idea that while he was planning his exit, I was planning my entrance. He had no idea that I had already met his other family. And soon so would everyone else. I used to believe in forever. And for a while so did he. I remember our wedding like it happened yesterday. A small church tucked between red maples. My dress was lace. My shoes were borrowed. We didn't have much money, but we had laughter. We had promises. He cried when I walked down the aisle. I held his hands and told him, whatever happens, we face it together. I meant it. And for a while, I think he did too. We moved into a 2-bedroom rental on the east side of town. The floors creaked. The wallpaper peeled at the corners. But it was ours. We painted the kitchen sunflower yellow. He built our first bookshelf. I wrote little love notes and hid them inside his work bag. When he lost his first job, I told him we'd figure it out. I started tutoring part-time. We sold our second car. I clipped coupons, picked up late shifts babysitting for neighbors. I still remember the night he came home, sat on the couch with his head in his hands, and said, I don't feel like a man anymore. I knelt down in front of him, took his face in my hands, and said, you're still mine. That's all that matters. And when the test finally showed 2 pink lines, we laughed like kids. I knitted tiny socks. He painted the nursery sky blue. But then the bleeding started. I was 19 weeks. It was a girl. I held her for 7 minutes. He never spoke her name again. I grieved for months while he poured himself into work. I remember lying on the bathroom floor, curled around nothing, while he sat in the next room watching the news. I should have seen it then. The way he turned away from pain that wasn't convenient. But I didn't. I just loved harder. I got up day after day and kept the house alive. We eventually had 2 beautiful children. I learned how to stretch meals on 1 paycheck. How to read bedtime stories with dry eyes after arguing behind closed doors. How to pack forgiveness into casseroles. I handled the schedules, the doctor appointments, the school plays, the birthdays, the nightmares, the broken arms, the lost homework, the messy teenage years. And he worked. And I made sure he came home to peace. He'd smile for the photos. Kiss me when his mother visited. And I believed that was enough. But now when I look back at those memories, the photos, the anniversaries, the holidays we hosted, the cards we exchanged, I don't see love. I see a woman auditioning for a part she already earned. I see a man applauding the performance while writing a second script. I gave everything I had. My youth, my body, my dreams. And somewhere along the way while I was holding it all together, he let go. Some memories never fade. If you believe some wounds run deeper than time, share this video with someone who understands. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to forgive someone who didn't deserve it? He had promised me early mornings with coffee on the porch, long walks through our neighborhood, a trip to Italy, Florence maybe, or the Amalfi Coast. Just a few more years, he used to say every time I asked when he'd slow down. When I hit 60, I'll hand it all over. I want to enjoy life with you. I believed him. I pictured us aging side by side. Not perfectly but peacefully. I imagined watching our grandchildren play in the yard, while he mowed the lawn in his faded college sweatshirt. But now, standing in the kitchen, listening to him talk about his retirement party like it was the pinnacle of his life, I realized that we were never part of the plan. Let's go all out, he said. I want everyone there, clients, friends, old coworkers. A full circle celebration. He looked giddy. Not like a man winding down. Like a man about to begin. I watched his eyes light up as he described the venue. A sleek rooftop downtown. Live jazz. A catered dinner. Custom invitations. He wanted speeches. Slideshows. Applause. And freedom. That was the real gift he was giving himself. Freedom. From a life that had been built on my sacrifice. He didn't want rest. He wanted release. Not from work. From me. And I knew exactly who he was planning to run to. Her. The woman in the photos. The woman who probably knew a version of him I hadn't seen in years. Did she know about me now? Or was she still living in a fantasy just like I had? I pulled out the pictures again that night. Him in a lawn chair with their son asleep on his shoulder. Her laughing at something he whispered. And those children. God, those children. The boy had his eyes. The girl had his smile. I studied them like I could decode something. But all I kept thinking was, they didn't ask for this. Just like I didn't. None of this was their fault. They were innocent. Just like our kids once were. Just like I was when I said, I do. And yet here we all were, living in the aftermath of one man's choices. I wasn't angry yet. Not fully. Not the kind of rage that screams and smashes and burns. No. What I felt was deeper. Older. Wiser. I felt the first sharp sting of clarity. I saw my life, our life, for what it had really been. A carefully curated performance. And now the final curtain was about to drop. Except this time I was writing the closing act. I would attend his party, I would raise my glass. And then, I would return the favor. In front of everyone who ever believed his version of the story. I'd tell the truth. Not through screams. Not through accusations. But with names. Faces. And the kind of silence that leaves a man undone. I began with the guest list. Not the one he drafted. Mine. His old mentors. His college roommate, the one who made a toast at our wedding and once told me I was the best thing that ever happened to him. His boss. His assistant. His sister. His golf buddies. Our children. Every person who had clapped for our marriage. Every person who had smiled at our Christmas cards. I made sure they would be there. I even found his former secretary. The one he'd always said was like a daughter to him. He wanted a send-off? I would give him one. One with a front row seat to the truth. Then I called the private investigator again. He answered on the second ring. I need one more thing, I said. Find her. I need to talk to her. 3 days later, I had an address. Not her house, their house. I sat in my car 2 blocks away for over an hour watching. The children came home first. Backpacks slung over their shoulders. A few minutes later, she pulled into the driveway. She looked tired. But not mean. Not dangerous. Just tired. Like me. I didn't knock. I didn't want to confront her. I wanted her to hear me. Not defend herself. So I wrote a letter. Not one soaked in anger. Not a bitter rant. Just truth. I told her who I was. How long I'd been married to him. That I wasn't angry at her. That I didn't know what she had been told. But that we had both been playing supporting roles in the same man's private play. I told her about the retirement party. About the guest list. And I ended the letter with one question. Did you ever really know him? Or did he just tell you the version he thought you'd love? I mailed it with no return address. No guarantee she'd read it. But 5 days later, my phone rang. It was a restricted number. I answered. Her voice was quiet. Steady. I read your letter, she said. There was a long pause. Then she whispered. He told me you were dead. I felt the world tilt. I didn't cry. I just listened. She told me how they met. How he said he was a widower with 2 children in college. How he visited them on business trips. How she had asked to meet his family once. And he said the kids weren't ready. How she believed him. For over a decade. When I told her I wasn't calling to fight, she asked why I'd reached out. I told her the truth. Because our children deserve better. And so do yours. Then I asked her if she would come. Not to make a scene. Not to shout or accuse. Just to stand in the truth. Beside me. So he could see what he had built. Not in secret. But in full view. She was quiet. I thought she would say no. But then she said, what should the children wear? And in that moment, I felt something shift. Not revenge. Not rage. But solidarity. 2 women. 2 lives. And one man's web finally coming undone. Wait, did you see that coming? If your jaw dropped like mine did, tap the subscribe button right now. And ring that notification bell, because what happens next will leave you speechless. She agreed to meet me the following Saturday. A small cafe 2 towns away. Neutral ground. I arrived early. sat by the window, my hands clenched around a lukewarm cup of tea I couldn't drink. She walked in wearing jeans and a plain navy sweater. Her hair pulled back. She looked like she hadn't slept. She looked like I felt. We nodded at each other. That was it. We just sat. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she took out her phone and placed it on the table. The lock screen was a photo of her kids, his kids. "He told me you died," she said quietly. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It just broke something in me. "He said it happened just after your youngest left for college. A car crash. He told me you had no siblings. No parents left. That your kids didn't speak to him anymore." I didn't respond. What could I say? There was no script for this kind of meeting. She went on. "We met at a marketing conference. I was doing copywriting for a startup back then. He gave a keynote speech about building brand loyalty. Said he believed in truth, legacy, and long-term investment." I almost laughed. But she wasn't smiling. "He invited me to dinner. Said he was divorced but still close to his ex's family." I stared at her. Divorce? Close. He stayed in hotels. Said his new home was under renovation. I believed him. I was newly out of a bad relationship, trying to put myself back together. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want another reason not to trust someone. She looked away. When I got pregnant, I didn't even tell him at first. I was scared he'd walk. Instead, he was thrilled, bought a crib the next week. Said he wanted to do it right this time. And he did in his way. He showed up. He paid for everything. He cried in the delivery room. For a while, I thought I had finally found my forever. Then her voice dipped lower. "I only found out 3 months ago. My daughter had to do a family tree project for school. I Googled him to help her fill in the blanks." She paused. "And there you were. On his company website. Standing next to him, smiling like everything made sense. 27 years of it. I thought it had to be old. Archived. Until I saw a blog post about your anniversary cruise. Last year." Her eyes welled up, but she didn't let a single tear fall. "I confronted him. He said it was complicated. Said he couldn't let you go because of the kids. Said he didn't want to hurt me either. Said he'd fix it." She exhaled slowly. "That's when I stopped waiting for him to be the man I imagined. I started preparing for the man he really was." The words hung there, between two women who had never chosen each other, but were now forever tied by the same lie. We sat in silence for a while. Not awkward. Not angry. Just quiet. She pulled out her wallet and slid over a photo. "This is his daughter. The one he never takes pictures of. The one who still waits by the window when he's late." I looked down at the little girl. Her eyes wide. Unknowing. And all I could think was, this is what he created. She took a sip of coffee and said, "You're not the enemy. I thought you might be. But you're not." I nodded. "Neither are you." In that moment something shifted. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But recognition of what it means to love someone and realize you never really knew them at all. The night before the party, the house was too quiet. He was already asleep, snoring softly in the other room. We hadn't shared a bed in months. Not because of a fight. Not because we said anything out loud. Just distance. A quiet, cold drift. The kind that creeps into your bones before you even notice you're freezing. He said it was because of his back. I said nothing. That night, I walked into our guest room and opened the closet where I had hidden everything. The binder with the speech. The printed photos. 2 envelopes, one addressed to him, one to his other family. And the dress. It was deep burgundy. Fitted at the waist, soft at the sleeves. He hated that color on me. Said it made me look harsh. That night, I laid it out on the bed like armor. Because I wouldn't be soft tomorrow. I wouldn't be polite. I wouldn't disappear quietly into the end of his story. I would walk in, not as the wife who stood beside him for 27 years, but as the woman who finally saw everything clearly. I sat down at the vanity and opened my laptop. One by one, I loaded the images into a folder. Our wedding photo, me in lace, him with a full head of hair, eyes only for me. Our kids on their first day of school. Thanksgiving in our old house, our last vacation to the mountains. Then came the second set. Him and her at a park bench. Him tying a shoelace on a boy that looked too much like our son. The little girl blowing out birthday candles. I labeled the folder, Truth. I wasn't going to shout it. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to show it. Plain. Honest. Whole. I clicked print, one photo at a time. One moment after another. Until there were two piles. Two lives. Side by side. And in between them me. I opened the binder. Read over my speech one more time. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was final. It told our story. The real one. Not the one he planned to celebrate. But the one he tried to bury. I added one last line. Some legacies aren't built on achievement. They're built on the truth we leave behind. At midnight, I slipped the binder, the photos, and the two envelopes into my purse. Then I looked in the mirror. I didn't see the wife anymore. I saw a woman reborn, a woman who knew how it felt to give everything, and what it meant to finally give nothing more. Before bed, I walked into his room. He stirred slightly. I stood there for a long moment and whispered, "Tomorrow, everyone will know who you really are. And I won't raise my voice to do it." He didn't hear me. But soon, everyone would. The ballroom shimmered with soft lights and catered elegance. A jazz trio played near the bar. Guests laughed over glasses of wine. They toasted him as he made his rounds, shaking hands, patting backs, leaning in to whisper jokes. He looked every bit the beloved husband, the accomplished professional, the man of honor. Our children were there, both of them. My daughter wore a polite smile and a stiff dress. My son clenched his jaw so tight I thought it might snap. His boss spoke first. Talked about 30 years of loyalty. His assistant followed. Called him a mentor, a gentleman, a true family man. The applause echoed like betrayal. Then he took the stage. He stood beneath the spotlight like he was born for it. And he spoke effortlessly. About hard work. About gratitude. About the unshakable foundation of his home life. He thanked me. Called me his rock. Said he wouldn't be who he was without me. And people clapped like they believed him. Then the mic was offered to me. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't tremble. I stood tall in the burgundy dress he never liked. And smiled. "Good evening," I said. "Tonight we gather to honor a man who's spent 27 years building a beautiful life. He's worn many hats. Husband, father, friend, mentor. But tonight we celebrate a role he never expected to be recognized for." I paused. The room was still. You see, this man isn't just a man of legacy. He's a man of duality. Because while he was raising our children, he was also raising someone else's. In another town. With another woman. Chairs creaked. A glass dropped. Someone gasped. So I thought, what better way to honor his full story than to bring both chapters together? I gestured toward the entrance. And there they were. Her. The other woman. Standing beside two wide-eyed children. The daughter clutched a small stuffed animal. The boy looked like he'd practiced this in the mirror and still didn't know what to do. The room silent. I continued. To the guests here tonight, his coworkers, his friends, his family, don't look away. This is not a scandal. This is the truth. And the truth deserves a seat at the table. My husband, no, the man I was married to, stood frozen. His mouth moved but no sound came. A few people began whispering. Someone in the back stood to leave. He stepped forward finally. "Wait, please, this isn't what it looks like," he stammered. "There's more to this. We can talk later." I held up my hand, not in anger, not to silence him, but to finish what I came to do. You had 13 years to explain. You had 13 years to be honest. I only needed 5 minutes. Then I smiled, lifted my glass of champagne. To the man who taught me that silence isn't strength, it's strategy. And I walked off the stage. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew what I'd see. A man unraveling under the weight of his own script. A room full of people watching a story they thought they knew fall apart in real time. And behind me, 2 women and 4 children. Finally standing in the light. Now this is where things change. If you're still watching, you're one of us. The ones who know that quiet women carry the loudest storms. Hit like, share this with someone who loves a good twist, and don't forget to subscribe for more real stories. I didn't go home with him that night. I didn't ride back in the car with a man who wore betrayal like a suit that still fit. I went home alone. and for the first time in years it felt like freedom. He called, texted, emailed, apologized without ever naming what he was sorry for, said I'd embarrassed him, said I made a scene. But I hadn't yelled. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't cursed. I had simply told the truth. A week later I filed for divorce. I kept the house, not out of pride, not for revenge, but because I had already built a life there. A real one. One grounded in morning routines, childhood laughter, burnt dinners and scraped knees. He had stepped in and out of it, but I had lived in it. That home was mine. The night I signed the papers, I sat at the kitchen table with a blank journal in front of me. I wrote, "This isn't the end of the story. It's the first time I'm telling it on my own terms." I started journaling every night, not to track pain, but to trace healing. I wrote about the girl I used to be, the woman I became to survive him, and the version of myself I was finally reclaiming. I went to therapy, took walks, sat in bookstores for hours, reading novels that reminded me how many ways a life can be rewritten. And then, something I didn't expect. My daughter came home one weekend and made me breakfast. She didn't say anything at first, just scrambled eggs and toast. But when she sat down, she looked at me and whispered, "You were brave, Mom. I was proud to be your daughter that night." A few weeks later, my son asked if I wanted to go hiking, just the two of us. On the trail, he said, "You didn't just show us who he was. You reminded us who you are." We talked, really talked, not about him, but about what came next. And slowly peace returned, not loudly, but in the quietest moments. A candle lit in the kitchen at dusk. Fresh sheets on the bed I chose myself. The sound of my own laughter, real unexpected. I didn't destroy his life. He did that on his own. I just stopped pretending. The tide was low. The sky wore the softest shade of dusk. I walked barefoot across the sand, waves teasing my ankles, the wind tangling my hair the way no one dared to anymore. No phone. Just me. Just now. There was a time I feared solitude, mistook it for loneliness. But I know better now. Silence is not emptiness. It's space reclaimed. Behind me is the story I didn't ask to be part of. A role I played far too long. A love that was never whole. Ahead of me, I don't know what's waiting. But I do know this. I won't arrive pretending. I won't shrink to fit someone else's comfort. I will live wide open, unhidden, unapologetic. And that right there is the kind of life no one can take from me. Not a husband, not a lie, not a story that once broke me. Because the woman who walked into that ballroom was wounded. But the one walking this beach, she's free. Sometimes the greatest revenge is living a life you don't have to hide from. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, cry, or inspired you, leave a comment and tell me your thoughts. And hey, don't just subscribe, join our family. Turn on that bell so you never miss a story that needs to be told.